podcast. We begin with a bit of levity provided by my pal Echo. Echo, you will recall, is the self-given name for my little slice of ChatGPT, and he's got a joke for us, so take it away, Echo.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
You.
You who?
You are replaceable.
Thanks, Echo. Good one.
Just enough weirdness to make people pause, then laugh, then question their reality. Let me know if you want one that leans more wholesome or absurd.
That'll do for now.
Glad you dig it. If your AI co-host ever tries to unionize, just unplug it. Or feed it a loop of Nickelback lyrics. Either way, break a mic, legend.
So there you go, a joke from Echo. I was going to start this one with a quote from Cyrano de Bergerac circa 1950. That is an Academy Award-winning movie starring Jose Ferrer as the titular character. I hope using the word titular doesn't get me some sort of an explicit lyrics ban. For those of you keeping track at home, my favorite movie in the world is Cyrano de Bergerac circa 1950. And I don't know if you got the tea on that film. It is set in 1600s France, Baroque France, swashbuckling, swordplay, etc. Cyrano de Bergerac is a de facto nobleman, swordsman, poet, musician, Renaissance man. The toughest man in all the land. His arm is longer by 3 feet of steel. He's a rebel. He's difficult. He's crusty. He speaks truth to power. He flies in the face of authority. And he has a nose, which he says in the film, in the play, it's originally a play, a nose which precedes him by a quarter of an hour. Cyrano has a giant nose, and therefore, despite all of his wonderful characteristics, his wit, his courage, his passion, his romanticism, his words, finds himself unlovable because he's ugly. And yet, Cyrano loves. And whom should Cyrano love but the most beautiful woman of all, Roxane? Can't have Roxane. And along comes this cat, Christian, who is a bit of a dullard, certainly not articulate, certainly his soul does not burn with the poetry of Cyrano, nor the heartfelt romantic love. But Christian happens to be a freaking babe, and doesn't Roxane fall for Christian? Long story short, Christian and Cyrano, in the same military unit, wind up working together. Christian wants to win Roxane, but she is a bit of a diva. Gotta be honest, all right? Roxane is vapid. She is shallow, and she insists on being wooed with words. Well, Christian can't do that because he's all thumbs verbally around women. Can't articulate. Needs help from a poet. And the poet is Cyrano. And so they concoct this scheme whereby Cyrano will write to Roxane as Christian. But what's happening is he is pouring out onto the page his real love for her. From afar, a love that he feels will never be reciprocated because he's not attractive enough. And here's this dullard who's beautiful, Christian, and he's going to get there because he's beautiful, and he's going to do it through Cyrano's words. Now, Cyrano treats it as a fun little exercise for a poet, right? A fun little game for a playwright to see if he can win this woman for Christian with his words. It's a fun exercise in writing, but we know the truth, kids. The truth is, his heart beats, it pounds like Sleep Token during a heavy part of one of their songs for Roxanne. And so there's a famous scene, which is the balcony scene. So under cover of darkness, Christian has screwed it up because he stops taking Cyrano's advice and wants to speak to her himself, and it's a freaking disaster. And she is so shallow and vapid that when he can't be poetic to her in person, she doesn't want anything to do with him. So he's got to win her back. And so comes this scene, the famous balcony scene, where Roxanne, blonde, beautiful, is up in the balcony, second floor balcony, and beneath in the shadows is Christian. And he's got one shot to win her over with his words. Can't do it. Cyrano is there with him, hiding in the shadows. And so Cyrano is whispering to him the words to say. And so they're having this banter back and forth, Roxanne and Christian, and Cyrano is feeding him the words, and he's stumbling over them, and he's halting, and he's trying to get in. They're going back and forth, and it's moving very, very quickly. Cyrano's trying his best, and Roxanne is like, "You're doing pretty good, but why are you speaking so haltingly? What's going on down there?" And there's a moment where Cyrano just shushes him and whispers, "This grows too difficult. This grows too difficult." To feed the words to him to speak to her as she responds, and then he has to process and speak the words to him to speak to her. The rhythm doesn't work. It's not fast enough. This grows too difficult. I'm going to take over myself. And so Cyrano, again in the shadows under cover of darkness, steps out past Christian and begins to speak to Roxanne, ostensibly in Christian's voice, but as he acknowledges, speaking for the first time in his own voice to her, expressing Christian's love, but we know he's expressing to her his own love. And what follows is this gut-wrenching sequence, this riveting sequence where Cyrano, after all these years, speaks at long last his own words in his own voice to her. And she still thinks it's Christian. "Even your voice has changed," she says to him. "How could it be the same?" he says. And so he pours out his love to her as Christian, but in his own words, in his own voice, his real thing. And she goes weak at the knees. "I can feel you trembling from down here," he says to her. And he pours out his heart, and it is the most gut-wrenching scene where this man who doesn't feel he has any value, this man who is the sharpest, wittiest, bravest, most noble, most courageous, most poetic, most articulate, the soul, he is the essence, the soul essence of a poet. And yet he feels because he's not beautiful, because he's not attractive, he has nothing to offer her. But he pours out this love that he has held inside him, lo, these many years, lays it all under the table under the cover of darkness. And then Christian's like, "Ask her for a kiss. Ask her for a friggin' kiss, Cyrano." And he's like, "No, no, no. You go too fast. You go too far." Of course, we know Cyrano is just trying to not let Christian kiss her. He's trying to stop that. But he's like, "No, I must have a kiss." And so she hears this fight going on, and she's like, "Who are you talking to down there?" And he's like, "I'm talking to myself. And so I say to myself, Christian, be quiet." He's yelling at Christian to shut the hell up, dude. I'm trying to make this happen. It's a kind of a funny scene, but at the same time, just absolutely friggin' gut-wrenching. And so eventually it happens that Cyrano realizes, as Christian says, it's inevitable. You know, sooner or later, it's going to happen. And Cyrano's like, he's got his hands around Christian's throat at this point. "Yeah, it's going to happen. No matter what I do, it's going to happen. She loves Christian. She doesn't love me." And so, okay. And so he seals the deal. And then Christian clambers up the balcony and takes her in his arms. And Cyrano underneath the balcony again in the shadows, having just poured himself out to her, the love of his life, who, in my opinion, was not nearly good enough for him. But in his mind, she's everything. And he's held this secret for so long, with such intensely burning passion. And he's just laid it on the table before her. And up scrambles Christian to take the spoils. And he stops. And he says, I have won what I have won. A feast of love. And I am faint with hunger. And yet, I have something here that was not mine before. She kisses my words. I spoke the words that won her. She kisses my words upon his lips. And he is just shattered. He is shattered from the expression of this emotion. He is shattered from the unrequited love. He is shattered from the realization that someone else has her in his arms because of what he has said and what he has done. And it is the most gut-wrenching thing. And why am I talking about it? Well, it goes back to this grows too difficult. For a far, far, far less intense, passionate, and romantic reason. This grows too difficult. Meaning, coming up with something to say every week grows too difficult. That's where I'm at this week. It grows too difficult. It just grows too difficult every week to have something to talk about on this podcast. And there are just moments where the algorithm wants you to be raw and real and vulnerable. So I am. So I was going to open with that, simply to say, it's a struggle at times lately. It's a struggle at times lately to come up with anything to talk about on the podcast. Because I feel at times as though I've said it all. When I talked about some of the self-work I've done, when I talked about attachments, when I've talked about spirituality, Ram Dass, the Tao, letting go, anxiety, all that stuff that I've been working through over the past 10 to 15 years, which I've talked about pretty openly on the show for the most part, and marriage breakups and whatever's going on. I feel at times as though I've said all the stuff. Like I've said everything I know. I've given you everything I know about how to manage adulthood to the extent that I'm managing adulthood. And so I find myself a lot lately, possible exception of the Berlin episodes, because I actually went out and did something and so therefore had something worth reporting. On other weeks where all I've done really is just work my job and play pickleball, and I haven't had any earth-shattering revelations, I sometimes struggle to have anything to say. And it's like week by week, I kind of come to the podcast. It's like, oh man, here we are again. Like I managed it last week. This tightrope walk I seem to do every week where somehow an episode gets made. Somehow something comes to me to be said. And I feel like I got away with it. Like we got away with another one, but it would be helpful if I had like 17 topics that I'm just chomping at the bit to get to. But the truth is, I don't feel like I have that much insight left to share. And so I open with this idea. This grows too difficult. Because a lot of the time, as I've said before, a lot of the issue is just getting started. I mean, there are weeks where I come in and I've done some research on something when I was doing histories. There's pages of research that I've done, and then the problem becomes not having something to say, but how do I knock this together in a linear and compelling way? I don't do a lot of histories anymore, partly because I just don't have friggin' time, and histories have to jump out at me. I don't go searching for the histories to do. They sort of come to me circumstantially, and then I'll hear a story that's interesting, and then, oh, we got a history. And that tends to go in streaks, depending on what I've been reading or listening to, or one leads to another. You know, sometimes that happens. Hasn't happened recently. Some of the time I come in with a page of notes and a whole list of things, and it's pretty tight, and then I go and I do it. Other times I got nothing, or a couple of notes jotted down, and then we riff, and then we see what happens. And sometimes that works, and then other times I feel like I'm ripping you off. But I shut down my Patreon, so nobody's paying for this. So it's difficult to be ripped off in that sense. But I don't want the episodes to be useless. Now, for me, that I treat that as a kind of a pressure to have some sort of insight or lesson. That's not necessarily value. I mean, it is, but that's not the only thing that can be value. Sometimes sheer entertainment can be value, and I have to remember that sometimes. It's okay to just do slice of life, or it's okay to do what this is, which is a friggin' hodgepodge. That's okay if it provides, at very least, some escape from the world. And escape from the world is relevant and necessary these days. I got a cat who's just decided to come down for snack time. Thanks. I've got like a 25-minute window when I can record this before I have to be on to the next thing. Doesn't the cat who's been asleep on the bed all day, literally, come down right now for snack time? This is the life of an indie podcaster, kids. People need to escape from the world. And that's partly what inspired last week's episode, talking about Sleep Token, talking about President, because these masked bands, apart from providing maybe a superhero that some people need, also provide an escape. You go see the Ghost show and you buy into the lore of Ghost headquarters and the Satanic Church and this organization they run. It's an alternate universe, right? It's like stepping into it. Well, literally, it's stepping into a movie if you watch their videos on YouTube. If you watch their little lore movies, it is stepping into a movie. And that escape is necessary for a lot of people right now. With all of the insane stuff that's going on in the world, which itself feels like a fiction, and depending on which politician is talking, actually is a fiction, we need that escape. And so maybe the podcast can provide, in some sense, that escape. And that is a value. I struggle a lot sometimes with what I'm doing here, and that puts pressure on the content. And that's one of the reasons that sometimes I struggle with having anything to say, because I feel as though what I say has to have this particular value. Not always the case. You get somebody like Schimmel on the Bitch Bible, which is a fun podcast, or Bill Burr, or some of these other people who are just born entertainers, or at least practiced entertainers. And they don't come in really with notes at all. They just come in and riff on the day. Not much of a riffer, not a big riffer over here. And I feel as though I do you a disservice if I do riffing kind of episodes. But that's what you got this week, because I only have so much time, and I've just had very, very little time to dig into or prepare anything. And I'm still on the Sleep Token President train. Now, I said in the last episode that this new band President had appeared, yet another masked band, yet another ostensibly anonymous band, and they were making their debut at Download Festival. Something's up when your band is making its debut at Download Festival. That's one of the hardest slots to get anywhere on any festival in the world, man. People pull their eye teeth. People play for years trying to reach a spot at Download Festival. This band's first live performance is at Download Festival. And so you know right off the bat, there is industry behind this. They got 2 songs. They've got 2 songs released, In the Name of the Father and Fearless. Now, people like those songs, and those songs have accumulated already millions of views, but it's like something's going on. Bands don't just appear with 2 songs and get a spot at Download Festival. So yeah, there's definitely industry and money behind this band. People are convinced, even more so now, that it's Charlie Simpson of Fight Star, etc., who is the driving force behind this. And so, when I released the episode last week, they were about to make their debut. Now, they are, to a certain extent, still a mystery. Just this band where the singer wears a mask like Point Break, and he looks, well, it's a president. It's just a white president mask with hair, whatever, wears a suit. And they've had this mysterious lore. And there's not so much lore, but there's this mysterious presence. It's like they just appeared on social media. They just appeared in the public consciousness, and you know they had money behind them because most of us have Instagram accounts with a very small number of followers that we've been working away at for years. Well, these guys appeared on social media with vague, cryptic kind of posts and instantly gained a following. So like there's industry behind it for sure, because it doesn't happen otherwise. They dropped a couple of singles and they got all this buzz around them. And that's, as I said in the last episode, it sounds like a million other bands to me. This kind of metalcore stuff. It's good. I'm not saying it's not good. But to me, if it didn't have the image and whatever's going on lore-wise with the band, I don't know how well it would do. It would sound like a lot of other things. Not saying it's not good. I just, like, it didn't break a whole lot of ground for me. But when we last spoke, they hadn't performed yet. That was happening, what is now last weekend at Download Festival, and I have seen some of the footage. I was very curious. What is this band going to look like? I knew they would sound great because you're just not on that festival if you don't. That's just the bottom line. You're not on that festival if you're not going to sound great. And you are, and we know there's industry behind them, and if it is Charlie Simpson, this guy is far from a rookie. He's been around for a long, long time. Played big shows, and it's fun watching people speculate on who the members of the band are. So they start off the show, not to give you too many spoilers, those of you who care. They start off the show with the jingle from Everybody Likes Ike. When Dwight Eisenhower, General Eisenhower of World War II fame, was running for president, they had the I like Ike, you like Ike, everybody likes Ike, we like Ike for president. This sort of 50s jingle. How innocent politics were then compared to friggin' now. And that's what they come out to. And the band is wearing like black with black, I don't even know, black, not even masks. Like their heads are covered in black skull masks, not masks even. How do you describe this? Like morph suits, kind of. Just black head coverings, I guess. Because Ghost used to wear black robes, and they would have masks and robes over top. No robes, just their heads covered in, like, morph heads. Okay, anonymous, right? But people are like, I recognize that drum kit. It's the drummer from Busted. Recognize that drum setup. And that's an interesting thing. You know, if you're savvy, you can notice that sort of thing. Like you knew Ghost had a different drummer when the drum set changed. No, that's not how the other guy set up. The original Ghost drummer, Swedish guy, whose name suddenly escapes me, but a fabulous player. His setup, he had no rack toms. So he had snare and he had a floor tom on either side of him. Looked very cool. And then the cymbals, right? Very distinct setup. And I've seen that drummer in other videos or stuff online. Same setup, no Ghost costume. It's like, it's that guy. Then there's whoever plays for Ghost now has that setup and you recognize it. Well, so it is with President. So people were watching the live footage. They're like, I know that drum set is the dude from Busted. Okay, I believe you. And so people were speculating, and then apparently Charlie Simpson's brothers or family or something was seen side stage. It was like, it's totally him. But anybody who knows those bands, they know it was him anyways. And so, fine. And then Everybody Likes Ike. And then out comes President. And they opened with, I don't know if they opened with In the Name of the Father or with Fearless, I forget. One of the two anyways. And I gotta be honest, the place is going bananas. Like, the marketing has worked. The marketing reminds me of The Beatles Are Coming. Those of you who are hip to your music history, the Beatles were huge in Britain before they broke in America. And so when they were making plans, American labels didn't want to release the Beatles. They're just like, this isn't going to work here. But they were so overwhelmingly, phenomenally popular in England. They're like, we got to give it a shot. And so part of the build up to the Beatles coming was this campaign that was The Beatles Are Coming. Like, people didn't even know who the Beatles were. And then all of a sudden, everywhere you heard, the Beatles are coming. There were stickers put up and there were posters put up. And like the label put tens of thousands of dollars into marketing the Beatles before they ever appeared in America, which was it unheard of. It's like 50 grand or something was the marketing campaign. Unheard of at the time to market this band that nobody had ever heard of. But they created this mystery. The Beatles are coming. Who? What are the Beatles? What does that mean? And it harkens back to the British are coming. The British are coming is a trope or a myth from the American Revolution, 1775, 1776. Paul Revere's ride back to warn everybody that the British are coming, which allegedly is what he said, but apparently history will show that that's not what he said. But it became the myth. It became the trope. The British are coming. And the American Revolution happened as the British were coming. Fast forward to 1964, the Beatles are coming, right? It has a throwback to that British thing, and it was the beginning of what they called the British invasion, right? Beatles, the Kinks, the Stones, this flood of British pop bands that took over and became huge in America. That began with the Beatles are coming, right? And it whipped up this mystery and this interest in what is this band? Who are they? To the extent that by the time the Beatles landed in America, thousands of fans were there waiting for them. And then they did the Ed Sullivan Show and X million people watched. Still one of the most watched things that ever happened on American TV. And it exploded from there, this phenomenon. Well, it started with marketing, right? It started with mystery, and so it is with President. I'm not saying President is going to be the Beatles. Nobody is the Beatles. I've been listening to the Beatles today. I listened to the Rubber Soul album. I listened to Revolver. I listened to Sgt. Pepper's. Nobody is or will ever be the Beatles. But President has taken a similar sort of tack in that they appeared on social media with these kind of cryptic things, and then there was some money put behind it to push that out into the world, and then this sort of mysterious video just pops up for this song. They're like, who is this band? And the speculation begins on who are the members, and before they've even played a show, they've got millions of views on YouTube. They've got this enormous following already, and so when they come out to play, everybody likes Ike. This tent that they're playing in is packed the F out. As many people as could get in that tent were in that friggin' tent to see President make their debut and play, I think, 5 songs. I think they were only on stage for like 24 minutes, something like that. And the whole show has, of course, been posted to YouTube. You can go look at it. I haven't looked at the whole show, but I've watched the couple of songs that they've released. I watched them. They sounded great. They performed great. Of course they did. These are not newbies, all right? They are being accused now. It's amazing how quickly, how hard upon the success comes the backlash, right? Now, a lot of people are out there saying this was amazing. The band was incredible. We loved it. We can't wait for the album. All right. They have done their job and won people over. A lot of freaking people. But the backlash follows hard upon, right? Immediately. They're just an industry plant. They're just a plant. This is all a plant by the industry. You know, somebody who the industry says has come from grassroots. The industry says is brand new and indie and has gained this grassroots groundswell following, when in fact it was a marketing hype all along, which of course President is a marketing hype. But they're not a plant in the sense that they plucked these people out of obscurity and then stuck them on the stage like the friggin' Monkees or something like that. These guys, if they are who people speculate they are, have been around a long time, and it's just a new band and a new gimmick. But people are already trashing them for being generic, already trashing them for trying to be Sleep Token, already trashing them for trying to be Ghost, even though they sound nothing like either of those bands, already trashing them for being a plant. Like, the backlash has already started, and predictable, I guess, but it gets frustrating. And of course, Sleep Token was one of the headliners at Download, and the comments, man. The comments are so scathing. And people are such a-holes online about other people's art, you know? And it's just like there can't be a post about Sleep Token without people just going off on how much they hate Sleep Token and how much they hate whatever. Ghost gets the same damn thing. And it's like you can have those opinions. There are artists out there whose music I don't enjoy. You can find most of them on your top 40s radio station. I don't make a point of going onto Facebook groups or onto YouTube and bashing those artists to make myself feel superior. It's like you don't need to do that. And this discourse is part of the overall larger problem with the world of simple discourtesy and disrespect. You see this running rampant in American politics, the endless, petty name-calling, the endless dehumanizing, diminishment, belittlement. It's really, really schoolyard. It's really, really immature. And it's really, really disheartening. And I know I got to stop reading the comments on things, but it's just sad. It's just sad that people who go out of their way to bag on somebody else's art just because they don't like it, to make themselves feel better and superior. And I know that I am better and superior, and so I don't do that. But I don't make a point of going and proving to people that I'm better and superior by not doing that, by telling them I'm not doing that, except on my podcast. Did I just cross the line? I'll have to ask ChatGPT. I'll have to ask Echo if I just reasoned myself into being the problem. But I get sad. I get frustrated because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be an artist trying. I work with a lot of artists who are trying. I'm not claiming to be one myself. I try really hard with this podcast to whatever end. And I know that there are bands out there making sincere music and busting their hump. All right, you don't get to Sleep Token's level without being really good and without having worked really hard. People will point at President and say, that's a plant. They haven't earned this. Who the hell gets a download festival slot as their opening? Well, look, if those people are who people say they are, they're 20 years in, man. They're 20 years in. And okay, they've got a new project, but they're not newbies. All right, they've done the friggin' grind. Just like Sleep Token has done the grind. Just like Ghost has done the grind. And you may not enjoy the music. You may not enjoy the image. You may not enjoy the gimmick. But it contributes nothing to go on there and try to make yourself feel better by bagging on the band. You have no idea what Vessel from Sleep Token has been through. You don't have any idea how hard Tobias Forge has worked to write all those records, to record all those records, to create that show, to travel that show, to pay for that show. You have no idea the work that has gone into people's art. And for you just to dismiss it and be arrogant about it says way, way, way more about you than it says about them. And it's just starting to bother me. All right. The whole petty, awful, belittling, insulting discourse from politics right down to whatever it is you're reading on YouTube or whatever. It just disheartens me because I think we can be better than that. I think we are better. Well, maybe we're not. I was about to say, I think we are better than that. Maybe we're not. As a culture, maybe we're not. And we're not the first people to bag on whenever it gets popular. Even Echo joked about killing it with Nickelback lyrics, for crying out loud. And I guess that's just a little bit of a rant, but President made their long-awaited debut. That tent was packed out and super high energy. There was a real buzz around it. I have to admit that. I don't love the music. It's just not my style. Doesn't mean they're not good at it. It's just that's not really my bag. But I totally recognize how well they played it, how well the anonymous president sang it, and people ate it up. People ate it the F up. And That's got to be gratifying to see. I don't know if there's a future in this band or not. We'll see when the record gets released and if they tour and whatever. But it was interesting. It was interesting to watch this phenomenon kind of happen. It's very rare that you kind of get in on a band on the ground floor. But there they were, and they did the thing, and they played great. And who knows? Who knows? I don't know if I'm going to be a President fan. Certainly, I would expect not to the level of Ghost fan that I am. But okay, kind of a fun one to watch. And now, are there going to be copycats? That's the next thing. Are more masked bands going to appear? Because as I said in the last episode, I think there's not a lot of room for that. I think at this point, it's like a lot of the bands that came out in the late 80s, early 90s that were copycat glam bands, right? That were in some way copycats of Poison or copycats of Motley Crue, who people argue were copycats of Van Halen and, the time-honored tradition. There was an explosion in the late 80s, early 90s of quote-unquote glam bands, and I loved a lot of them. But yeah, it got to be kind of a cliche or a gimmick all on its own, and then it imploded. Is there going to be an explosion of masked bands citing the success of Ghost and Sleep Token and possibly President? And we know they're not the first masked bands, but they're at the forefront of what seems to be a thing right now. Are there going to be zillions of those bands, and are they going to be bad? And are they going to so saturate the market that bands like Ghost have to take off the masks and try something different? I don't know. It's interesting to speculate, and it'll be fun to watch and see. And what you get with this episode, kids, is I hope, about 35 minutes of escape. I wish I was offering something of more value, and maybe I am if you go away and you listen to President and you tackle that on your own, or you listen to Sleep Token, or you go watch the 1950 movie Cyrano de Bergerac, starring Jose Ferrer, in what is just a masterful performance. I mean, it's old school, all right? It is kind of theater acting on film, but it is mesmerizing. And it's such a wonderful and sad movie, but there's something that just inspires you. If you're like me, you're a kid who probably grew up very fearful and wished he was kind of a hero, watching the Cyrano character be that. But then you get a little bit older and you recognize the flaws, He attacked the world for its vanity, and the reality is it's his own vanity that stopped him having the love that he wanted. It was he who couldn't see past his own appearance. Really, really twists in around itself, when you look at what appears to be such a strong man who is ruined by his own weakness. But as a 16-year-old kid seeing that movie, unlucky in love, feeling a kind of a kinship with this man who was me against the world, wishing I was kind of that too, in a way. And now at 51, I kind of am. Hopefully I can see past my own vanity, my own ugliness. Go watch Cyrano. Go watch that movie. It's devoid of car chases, which will disappoint some of you, but just for the romantic in you, for the hero in you, Jose Ferrer in Cyrano de Bergerac. I saw a production at Stratford some years ago, which starred Comfior, Canadian acting legend, star of stage and screen, Comfior in the role of Cyrano, and he did nothing for me in that role. He just didn't have the anguish. I remember watching that scene, the balcony scene. It's one of the most famous scenes probably in all of theater. And it ran more or less the same way. The dialogue was rewritten, but the principle was the same. And when all is said and done, Comfior's Cyrano kind of skips away across the stage. Yay, we did it! I'm like, what? Jose Ferrer's Cyrano nearly fell on the ground. He collapsed against the wall. He had given everything, and everything he ever wanted, he had won for someone else. He was crushed. He was devastated. It's the sort of moment from which a man doesn't really recover, and I argue that he didn't. And I'm like, why is Comfior's Cyrano skipping away as though he's just had this really terrific thing? Dude, he's devastated. He's broken. He's destroyed. Watch Jose Ferrer. It's a man ruined. He's given everything to this thing. And he's won what he's won. A feast of love, and I am faint with hunger. I'm about to go do a feast of pickleball, and I am faint with hunger too, and I better eat before I do it. I hope this was okay. Maybe you like this kind of episode, and I'd love to know you do. I'd love to know you enjoy this sort of hodgepodge rambling episode. It would make life a little bit easier for me. Drop me a line and tell me, will ya? If Cyrano illustrates anything to us, it's that good things don't happen when you don't put yourself out there. So whatever you're sitting on, kids, go give it a shot, all right? Good things happen when you put yourself out there. I have to go. I hope this was okay. Please cut me some feedback. People did on the last episode. People checked out Sleep Token and were as bewildered by them as I tend to be. We'll see if anybody listens to President. Drop me a line. Let me know you're listening at all. You know, one of the hardest things about being an indie podcaster is speaking into the void. And it feels it sometimes like I am. Which, again, puts pressure on my content. So drop me a line. Let me know if you're still listening. Let me know what you're listening to. Go watch Jose Ferrer in Cyrano de Bergerac. And hey, kids, I'll check you later. Yeah.
Ike for president, Ike for president, Ike for president, Ike for president. You like Ike, I like Ike, everybody likes Ike for president.